Welcome to the show, everybody. Excuse me. It's been a very cold morning here. It's snow. You can see the new background here. I'm just trying to mix it up a little bit here. Hopefully everybody can hear me all right tonight. Again, we've just kind of rolled a few minutes early. We were set up, had some other stuff going on, so I figured we'd go a few minutes early. Hopefully the quality-wise is doing okay. You want to reload that, Ian? Let's just try one more thing. On my end, the quality is a little bad, so if everybody can hear me okay, just give me a shout out too so I know. Again, let's see. Everything looks fine. I think we are good to go, it looks like. We still have a little lax on feed, but it looks like everything's playing fine. So welcome everybody to the show. I picked something background-wise that just kind of what reminds me of what's outside my big window back here behind us. It's been snowing. We're supposed to get actually snow tonight. It was 22 this morning when I got up. Really cold, brisky, nice little drifts of snow just wisping across the street. Kind of looked like sand for those of you who lived on the beach and watched the sand roll across the highway or the road. I lived in Florida, for those who didn't know, and it always reminds me of that, the snow up here. So it's always kind of reminiscent. I grew up in the north, so I'm used to snow, and I miss either or. So I can miss the snow on one time of year, and always miss the beach. In the evening. Just after it rained, it's cooled off. And for those of you who don't go to the beach or haven't been to the ocean, you're missing a little bit there. It's not a life changer, but I love traveling, so we do get around when we can. I'm glad to see everybody is on. Let me see here who we got. I know, as I said, this is a little early, so I don't expect everybody to be right on. Let me make sure I got my phone and everything else going on here. Let's see here. Disney Family 515, Lexhem, W. Wally, The Truth, David Rubino, Saigon 111, Thomas Lerzer. Let's see here. Mr. Mark, Linda Carrier, Diego, welcome. Tom Rolando, I'm sorry. Lex Ham, I already got. Judy Ilm. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that bad. I'm sorry. Stephen Rose Resells. Mike Donnelly. I will get to questions in just a minute here. Treasure Experts. Patricia Lynn. J.I. Let's hop up here. I do see a question already. Where are we? I better button the shirt up. Yeah, it is cold outside, actually. I usually wear a jacket since we are below technically ground level where we're at here, so it is a little cool, and it's partially done intentionally because there's a lot of electronics running where we're at, so anything to cool it down and alleviate some of the heat. When you have servers and towers and everything else running along with several sets of lights, it gets kind of hot around. So anyway, I like the snow, so I kind of felt festive today. It's not a big, I don't get a huge joy out of, the backdrop here. It's a necessity, but I do like to see something neat. So, and again, as I said, I love the snow. I love winter. I'd miss it if I didn't have it. We lived in the South for a long time, and we actually ended up driving hours just to take the kids up to, the snow line so they could see snow for the first time. My kids grew up in the South, so they didn't see snow until they were like, maybe 11 or 12, maybe, possibly, somewhere in that range. I think my oldest was 11 or 12 when they saw snow for the first time. I saw snow since, I can remember. We were through the blizzard of 78 and the whole works, and snowed in and the whole works. So anyway, let's see here. Mike, you mentioned that you use pickers in your sourcing. How does that work out for you? I'm thinking about doing the same thing. Pickers works out good as long as you got good pickers. Sometimes you got to coax them and teach them certain areas or certain things to look for. The biggest thing here is them getting stuff that's either the wrong item or not paying attention to something. You draw a fine line with having a picker. When they buy something thinking you're going to like it and it's not really what you wanted, and you say no, they're going to be frustrated, some of them, and you could lose the ability to get these people to get you stuff. So there's always a fine line that you run on having pickers. It's a little give and take. Sometimes I buy items that I don't really want just to keep in good favor. It's usually something I'm going to make money off of either way, but just not what I would rather mess with. Like I got some vacuum tubes, and I'm talking hundreds of them for one of my pickers, like 690 or something like that. Maybe it was even more than that, I don't remember. But I only sold enough to get my money back and make a little bit. And literally, they're still sitting here in boxes. I sold some to somebody else for them to sell too, just because I had so many of them. But that was something I wouldn't have bought. But this guy has been very good to me, and he's given me a lot of good deals. So I felt I didn't want to stick the guy with these items. I mean, I still made money. It's just a long process. There's a lot of work involved when you get stuff like that. So when you get a picker, you gotta pick your battles that you want to fight with them. Not fight per se, but the ones you think you can win, and you're not going to upset them. So I draw a fine line with some of the pickers I have, and I've talked about like finder's fees and things like that. You got to really, really, really watch out on offering anything up front in the beginning, only because once you do that, you're never going to be able to get away with taking that away from somebody. So the picker wise, it's not all fun and games all the time. Sometimes, I've gotten in arguments with the picker and things like that, and I'm pretty mild-mannered, so it wasn't like a drawn-out argument or anything, but it was a bad situation where I could have lost some contacts, which I don't wish to lose. So, somebody else, I'd also talked about doing like a video from a live auction, and I do know somebody, actually personally. I grew up with the guy, and I've known him since I was like 16 or 17, senior year of high school, and his family has an auction house, but there's some, I guess, legal issues, and he's not comfortable with doing it. So that's another example of, you don't want to burn your bridges. I would love to get in there with some video. I see other YouTubers who, sneak cams in there and cameras and stuff, and I'm just not one to violate some written rule for a video or anything like that, because I'm not trying to make it rich on these videos or anything. So, I'm not really going to risk myself or put myself out there and cut any of my throats with some of my comrades and the people I work and do stuff with on the side. So anyway, that's why I don't do some things other people do. I'm not a dumpster diver or anything like that. I love watching the videos, don't get me wrong, but I'm not the one. Just like, getting boxes. There's nothing wrong with getting boxes out of a dumpster or anything like that. I know it's a little off topic, but for me, I like the brand new clean boxes. I get the exact same size, and I buy them in mass quantities. So I've got several sources I get. So when Walmart's no good, I can just call a box manufacturer. But believe it or not, like boxes wise, and I've talked about this before, it's cheaper to get boxes from Walmart than it is to get them from a company that actually makes those same boxes, basically. Just because they buy in sheer volume and, for all their stores at once, and they bulk buy, they warehouse them in, different areas of the country and stuff. So anyway, hopefully that gives you a little bit on the pickers. As I said in the past, it takes a while to get even just one person to give you a call. Most of the people that I'm hooked up with are people I've been in contact with, some cases a couple of years before I actually got them as a picker. Buying things from him here, buying things from him there. I would never rush into trying to get somebody to do something like that. A lot of the time, and two of the people specifically, I got as a picker because I was the only one that always, when I said I was going to be there, I was usually there a couple minutes early. I was never late. I always had enough cash to buy what I wanted. I usually didn't quibble with the prices when I first started going to this gentleman. Either one of them, really. One, I could go back and forth, and it was like an old timer, and I could joke around with him, and he's still like that. So, anyway, there is a lot to it. It takes some time. You got to get in with somebody who knows what they're doing, too, at least somewhat. Someone who doesn't want to do internet or whatever, got themselves in trouble. I don't care what the case is, as long as everything's on the up and up and I'm legally following all the rules. I'm not really worried about any of the other aspect of it. But pickers are something that's acquired over time. It's taken me a long time. It's taken me a long time to find people that will work around my schedule and that will contact me before they'll contact anybody else. Most every picker that I have has, some of them have 6, 10, 15 other people that they talk to that buy specific stuff off of them. Some pickers will only let me see certain items, and everything else goes to some other people, like sports cards and things. I'm not into sports anyway, so I'm not really worried about that. Big antiques and big size items, most of them already have a high-end dealer in town that deal with that and pay them top dollar. So, you can't get in with every picker for every single thing. But I buy, the low stuff on the tree just because it's cheap, it's easy to get, and it still makes a good profit. So that's our bread and butter. And most of the pickers that I get, don't really have a market for that. So, and they're not ones to, do anything with internet. I even offered to show a couple of them in the past. They're just not they just don't mess with it. They like the atmosphere of setting up at a weekend flea market. They don't do it full time. They're not interested in wrapping up at all. And in some cases, even for the pickers, I've actually sold stuff for some of my pickers, just on a commission basis as well. Stuff out of my area, sometimes a vehicle or something along that line too. So, it's not much more than taking some photos and, popping it up, and then they pay the fees, and then it's split, whichever way we're doing it, whether it's 40 or 60 or 30 or 70 or it depends on who it is, of course, so I try to be fair, and, whoever gives me good deals, I work out the same way in return. So anyway. Lex Hem looks like Connecticut. Yes, I have been to Connecticut, and that does kind of look like a winding road. We actually were through that whole area. I spent some time in New England. We were in Saugus, so anybody, if you're know Connecticut and you're up in the area, we stayed in Saugus. We did the Salem tours, and we went whale watching off Gloucester. We went in through New Hampshire, went through Connecticut, Rhode Island. We drove all over the place. We were in Concord. Ravine, we went through a little city called Ravine, which every house there had a plaque that said somebody slept here. Even the cemetery looked like it was from the 1700s. It was a really neat experience. We went in some old houses from, like the 1690s era, where, you got a duck just to get in, and duck walking around, and the beams are low, and I love that kind of stuff. So for us, it was a very enjoyable visit up there. I spent almost a month and a half on and off up in Boston area in Saugus. So if you've ever been up there, that's where I went to Brimfield's. I can't speak highly enough about Brimfield's. Brimfield's is probably the biggest, best antique market for finding anything you could possibly want anywhere I've ever seen in my entire life. It blows every other place I've been. And I've been all the way to California. We've been in the big flea markets in downtown D.C., hit the ones in Georgetown, all the way down to Florida and Mount Dora. We've been to the Texas ones. I've been to Denver. Been to some in Wisconsin. I've been all across the country working for people in the past as a regional. And, the best place on this globe, or at least on our continent, from what I've seen, is Brimfield. So if anybody lives in the Boston area, you could live off of Brimfield's, literally, and not have to go anywhere else but Brimfield's. This is just a given for what I've seen. But anyway. Welcome all. If I haven't called you out, I will get to you hopefully as we go through here. I'm always long-winded, and I do miss answering some questions at some time, so I try to get them all in there. Interesting comment, Patricia. Do you ever pick eBay? Saigon111. On very rare occasions have I bought something off eBay to resell, just because most people these days that sell on eBay, regardless of what they say, are actually resellers themselves, and they're usually looked up almost everything. I have more luck in the ones that are still holding on to the brick and mortar stores, just because they obviously don't look it up to put it in the store. A lot of the items you even see in there, they could have done better selling them online. A lot of people just don't like messing with that. They're weekenders. They throw it up. They don't want a warehouse full in their house. There's a lot of reasons people don't do eBay. They like their full-time job. They don't think it's possible. It's just not something they want to do on a full-time basis. So, there's many reasons you can not do eBay and, still do great. But for me, I don't usually find much on eBay these days. Once in a blue moon, I run across something, usually after it's already sold, that somebody bought that, is worth 100 times what it was. A book or something, or a toy or something that some uninformed person put up. I'd buy it now for like 100th less than it was worth, and it's sold immediately. You'll see that, but as a general rule, it's just not worth me wasting my time. Most of the categories that I would even consider buying something in, there's 100,000 items in there, and I just don't have the time to sit there and look every single day of the week. That's what it would take to pick off of any site anywhere. It's just not practical these days. An auction, a live local auction, would be so much better because I can buy in huge bulk. I don't have shipping costs. I can actually see the items, and you have a better chance of getting better stuff when they're just pulled out of an estate, as opposed to somebody buying bunches of stuff out of a state, sorting through them, and then them listing them on eBay. So, just keep that in mind. Just like I've said about, buying big lots from sellers and things like that. Most of the sellers, including myself, when we're selling big lots of stuff, it's stuff we've went through. We're liquidating our inventory. It's not bad stuff. It's just not high dollar stuff that's worth my time. If I sell a lot of something, there's still going to be some stuff in there worth some money, and it'll be worth what the price is, or, considerably more, but it's just not, a good source for us. You can do it as you wish, but, I've run the gambit. And auctions, estate sales, flea markets are always better for me. I may not get as many items like at a flea market as opposed to an auction, but a flea market, usually I can score a couple $100 items out of there easily to compensate me for my time. Usually if I go to a flea market, I'm running through it, I'm looking for certain specifics, and I'm only there a couple hours. So in that time, I'm usually netting in, $300 an hour or somewhere in that range at the end of the day. So if I'm out there 2 hours, I'm hopefully at least getting a $600 return on that investment of my time. And I avoid some, and I've talked about this. Research, write down the best ones to go to. Don't waste your time if you never find anything at a flea market. Don't go back anymore. Go to a different one. Sometimes it's better to go to a different one that's a little farther away and sink some time into it, as opposed to, sticking to the close ones, just trying to be practical. I'll drive to some far away ones, including almost an hour away is one that I go to that has a flea market like every 2 months. But usually it's a big score. The last one I scored several $1,000s in vintage toys, not super vintage, but 80s toys. And they were gone. I think the very first night I had some up, I had already doubled my money, if I'm not mistaken. So, that's a big thing here. When you're working on a low budget, buy what you can and make sure there's some good stuff in there, and sell enough right away, immediately, that day, the minute you walk in the house, to get your money back. And then you can turn that money back into buying something else, and you still have the bulk of the merchandise sitting at your house still to list, so there's your profit. So turn your money quick if you're new and starting out. I don't worry as much about that because we've got, slush funds, and, I've got, enough coming in on any day of the week that if something hit us, we wouldn't have it much to worry about. So if you're just starting off, though, turn your stuff right away. You can't afford to do what we do and run a 90-day plan for the most part. If you got income coming in and it's not a big ordeal, run longer if you have to, and worry about more long-tail items than quick turns. If you're new, quick turns are what you got to do. I mean, it's a given. When we first started off, we didn't have a plan. I didn't have a method. All I did was try to get some money turned right away because we were just out of college. I didn't have a job, and you see where we're at. But it's taken a hell of a lot of work. I don't usually cuss, and that's not bad of a cuss word, but for me, it was a hell of a lot of work to get to where we're at, where I can finally now relax and do stuff for the family and not have to worry about it. So anybody sitting on think it's going to be just easy because you see me or somebody else doing it, it's not an easy life when you start off. It gets easier and easier as time goes by, but it's not an easy thing. I can promise you that. It's a lot of work, and I mean a lot of work. So anyway. Let's see what we got here. South Beach for years. Yeah, I loved the ocean. We lived in Florida. I lived in Flagler for a little while, near Daytona, if anybody's familiar with Flagler. It's north of Daytona, up A1A. I literally could hear the ocean from my bedroom. We lived between the inner and the intercoastal, so we were technically on the outer island at that point. So anyway, you got to know the coast to kind of know what I'm talking about. But let's see here. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, John. Let's see. Patricia, I called. J.I., Judy, Jennifer. Thanks for the background comment. As I said, was feeling festive. Treasure experts. Question. Out of your one store that you share, how many of what % are long tail items, and what is the lowest price point you will sell something at? I don't mind selling stuff down to, say, $7.99. I almost never will mark it down, but $7.99 is usually my bottom line, and it will have to be something that I only have to take 2 pictures of, and it's a quick list. Like a stack of postcards for $7.99 listing. Ian just listed some literally just a few minutes ago. Those are quick to list. They're quick to take a scan, actually. And I've got a ton of videos already shot. Ian's been helping edit here, too. So you'll get to see him real soon here. We're working on that right now. I have a issue with my USB. I need a second USB port 3 or USB 3 port. So anyway, just FYI, we will be having some other add-ons to the channel here, as I said. I've invested some money from Patreon back into the show, so I haven't kept a dime. I've got a second cam that I bought, another high def sitting here, just waiting to see about getting a port and another 8 gigs of RAM. But anyway, Longtail wise, in the store I share, or really either store, Longtail is most of my stuff. 99% of my stuff is probably Longtail. That doesn't mean it's all Longtail. Usually what happens, and I've said this, if I list 100 items in one day, I usually get 4, 5, 6 sometimes only a couple, but we always sell some of them that same day. So as time goes by, in the first 5 days of me listing 100 new items, usually 5 or 10% of that is quick move. And that's usually, I can almost set my clock to something like that, literally. And I'm doing some consultations through Patreon, so if anybody needs a consultation, there is a charge, obviously, but I had a consultation with somebody else, and we discussed all this kind of stuff, too. That's some of the keys to having this work. If you don't mind waiting on something, you get more money that way. It's just a given. Just like breaking up, let's say I bought a huge lot of postcards. Instead of selling them as a lump, obviously, it's so much more practical to break stuff up and sell them individually. It does take longer. You have to be patient. You have to have enough stuff up to already be generating your daily sales, So a certain amount, like every day you do $750 or $850 or $950 a day, or whatever the case may be. Ours is bordering on close to $1,000 a day for the last 5 days straight. We had some big tick here after the holidays, which is what I expected. The beginning of the month, I would honestly anticipate it's going to be a little slower because everybody's paid rent. And again, a lot of the influx you see in sales in collectibles, as well as clothing, but not as much clothing, but with collectibles and antiques, you'll see an influx around payday when people buy stuff. It happens all the time. I always get people that ask if they can wait, and I'll hold people off, and they'll pay once a month and things like that. Usually the max is 30 days I want to do, because after 30 days, you can't invoice items that are older than 30 days that were bought in with newer items. eBay will not do that, so you have to add it into your shipping or send a separate invoice, which is a pain. So I have a 30-day with that. But most items are long-tail items, literally. And, as I said, 10% of it isn't, just because it sells, but I never worry about what's going to sell immediately and what's not going to sell immediately. I research it. If it's good, it goes up. If it's over $7.99, it's going to be quick to list, quick to photograph, and quick to pack. It goes up. If it's harder to pack, let's say if it's a 78 record, I will not sell a 78 record under $14 just because of time in to pack. I do charge a little extra on 78 records for shipping. I have an overestimate on it only because of time in, and that costs more to send one than anything else I send, pretty much. It's not a big chunk difference, but it's 70 or so more cents in cardboard. The rest is free newspaper, or if I feel lazy, I'll go buy a end cut of bubble wrap, and I'll just go with that end cut of bubble wrap. So it just depends on where you're at in your business. Most people, when they're starting off, there's no way on earth they can do long tail items for the most part. You can mix some in as you get other items in, but you also have to think that I have an anchor store, so I pay 4 cents for the first 10,000 basically. You get 10,000 listings per anchor store, so I equate that to so many cents per first 10,000 listings instead of saying my first 10,000 listings are free. Yes, they don't bill me for them, but I am incurring a cost of $300 basically for my first 10,000 listings. So I break that down, and if you're not at an anchor store level, you could be paying 10, 15, 20 cents or 25 cents, whatever your cost range is for your level of a store, or if you don't have a store. So you don't want to do long tail items when you're paying 5 times what I am for a listing. 5 cents or 4 cents or 3 cents takes a long time to even go over $1. It's over a year. It's 2 years in some aspects of it to hit $1. So I don't worry if I add $1 to an item cost when I've only spent $1 on it. But if you're buying something and you're new and you bought something for, say, $5, and it could take you 2 years to sell, it might not be worth selling. So you just have to have some point where you decide you're not going to mess with it. So, or you can't afford to do long tail, or you can't afford to flood it and not sell enough items. Research is your key to everything. As I said, if you're not researching and you're just throwing a bunch of stuff up to fill up your store, you're going to fail, because your store is going to have goods that aren't worth selling, and you're going to be reoccurring fees on those items from the eBay fees. So I'm sure you don't really want the reoccurring fees. At least I wouldn't think that would be a good idea. So anyway, hopefully that gives you some ideas on that. Let's see here. Welcome, Aaron. Yep, festive is the point. It was cool, brisk, as we said. Let's see, where am I? My chat disappears, as I've said. It seems to do that quite often. Let's see, where are we? Hang on just a second there. Excuse me for just a second while we try and figure out why my chat is going off again. Okay, the truth. Stay out of the dumpsters, folks. Yeah, I see some people pulling out some good things in some cases. I've seen some mannequins pulled out locally here. They were full-fledged, full-size mannequins that a store just trashed, and it was 7 of them. The person made a couple grand, from what I understand, on them. He had them on Craigslist even. I know he sold a couple on eBay, some of the kid ones, and he got like $600 a piece for a couple of those. I don't know how a business would throw those out, but sure enough, he had them. I saw them. So anyway, some dumpsters are good, and others are dangerous. There's some glass and things that could cut you and things. You got to know the legality too. Some it's against the law. If they have no trespassing signs, it's not public domain at all. So just keep that in mind. Welcome, Carl. Hang on a second here. Yeah, New England's got some great history. We loved going up there. We stood at the Fisherman's Monument in Gloucester, and we actually went to the House of Seven Gables and stayed there a night. It's a bed and breakfast, or it used to be. We went through Salem. We drove all over. I just loved New England. We landed, and as I was in 2 different seasons, and we were going down the main stretch. It might have been A1A. I'm not sure what it's called up there in that area, but we were right along the coast, and there was couple mile long fields of just flowers that were just. It was an awe-inspiring sight, I have to say. I love nature, so anything's great nature-wise, but this was just phenomenal. The color fields they changed from one color. It was a bright, I've got pictures, massive pictures, but it would change from one color to the next as the type of flowers changed, and it went on for a long ways. And some of those flowers were in bloom when we were there in the fall, and with the fall leaves, it was just a rainbow of colors out there. It was really wild. I'd never seen anything like it. And I grew up in the north too when I was a kid, but never been to New England until I was an adult, and it was just an incredible experience all around, and whale watching and going off the coast, and all around it was like one of the best experiences me and the wife had. I was technically working, but I only was required to put in 20 hours. I was a regional then, and I only put in 20 hours a week. It was a small area that we were closing down, and I was just handling it until it closed. So I did frequent trips from Florida to Boston. I flew into Boston, and a couple of times we flew into Portland, the Portland airport. And then I did Denver, doing the same kind of thing too occasionally, or Whittier, California. But I loved going up to Boston. I brought the wife. My youngest son at that point had like 50,000 frequent flyer miles from traveling with us too, and he was, 1.5 or 2, I think, at that point. So anyway, it was a nice experience. My bosses were great. It's the Lou I still talk about in some of my videos. Best boss I ever had. I just wished everybody had like a mentor type like that. He was the bomb, and part of why I am who I am anyway. So he was a good guy. Near me, and Zephyr Hills used to have a lot. I've been to some in there. There's some good flea markets actually in Daytona. Or there used to be actually on the main strip. where I-4 dead ends into A1A out in that general area when they the change over there. I think Palm Coast is the area that we used to get off, and there used to be one like right up A1A in the Palm Coast area. Like you get off and you go past the Palm Coast Players Club, if you know the area at all, Carl. I know Zypher Hills. That's more inland, but we lived in Claremont, and I did Mount Dora. Renninger's, if you're out that way, is good too. We used to go down in West Palm. West Palm Beach has a real nice one too. There's even one way down in Key West that we hit even occasionally, but we used to travel a lot in Florida. I've been all over in the state of Florida, so Florida's a nice state. It's hot though, so anyway. Let's see here. I live in Farmington. I've been through Farmington too. Yeah, Farmington's a nice little town. I have been through that area. Somebody who I was acquaintance with actually lives up in there, and he actually does stuff for the movies occasionally, but he's a military guy. I'm not going to call him out because, it's not something I'd like to do, but it's somebody well known that you've heard of if I would have called him out. Aaron, Brimfields, I don't get up that way. I'm sure if anybody wants to, that would be the place to go when Brimfields is in high season. I haven't been out of the general area in a year or so, honestly, just because I've centered it all in on work. Another reason I wouldn't go to eBay Live or any of the Poshmark festivals or any of that kind of stuff, just because my pathway is lying a different way. I would go and take some time to go to Atlanta and go to Dragon Con, though, just because it would be a money-making experience. Brimfields, though, of course, would be money in the pocket. You could more than pay for a hotel, your airline ticket, a rental car. If you did a full couple weeks there shopping, you'd make some money as long as you know what you're doing. Brimfields can be a little daunting if you don't know, your stuff. You're not going to have time to look up everything because it's packed and people just move. You got to get there early. I loved Brimfields. That honestly is the best buying place I've ever been to in my life. I mean, honestly, and I've been to some of the big ones, as I said, in California, even the DC one, the once a month DC one, or there used to be a big one in downtown DC, Georgetown area, just over the Key Bridge, if you're familiar with the area. But anyway, ever get a boatload of state spoons that people collect? Yeah, honestly, I do. I got a bunch at a garage sale maybe 3 or 4 months ago, and then occasionally at an auction. I've showed some even in a couple videos. I got a bag full of Remember the Maine from 1898 Spanish-American War spoons not too long ago that I had even showed, but I'll buy big bulks of them if they're cheap enough. You got 90 with 2 display cases for $40. Haven't researched them. Be careful on that, Carl. At $40, it may not sound like a ton of money, but you might be borderline on not making enough to make it worth your while on that. You could, of course, score on even one spoon that could go for that, but I always look up a couple. If there's a sterling or two in there, I'll usually take a shot. At that price, if you had 1 or 2 sterlings, you'd be set. It just depends. Just because they're collector spoons, you got to get the earlier ones. The scarce ones are the ones from some specific type of event, like a 1908 town festival. Something like that's going to sell. Or spoons that are specific from certain parks, like a Yosemite one that's in Sterling or something. State spoons can sell, so don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you're not going to make any money, but always be cautious on that. I would hope that you research them enough to know that you're going to make a profit. It scares me a little bit when I see haven't researched it yet. Always research it before you buy it, honestly. That's where a lot of people make mistakes. And I'm not trying to call you out, Carl, at all, so don't take that as any offense. I'm just pretty much straightforward on, it. I want you to do good, so, take it as a good comment. So, anyway. Do you have tracking for postcards? Yes, I track everything I send, JR. Everything. Postcards, I charge $3.50 to send anything out. I never send anything in a regular envelope. Every single thing I send is tracked. Everything. And I won't send it if I can't track it, for the most part. Most overseas items are sent first class international, or if they're not to the 6 or 7 countries that I ship to, everything goes through the eBay Global Shipping Program. Sales on the Global Shipping Program are down for me for some countries, so I could lose my top rated plus in a couple countries. And I was sweating that and thinking maybe I should do something, but at this point, I sell more than I did before in overseas shipping than I probably ever have. So I'm not going to worry about it if I lose it in one country or the other, because one specific country makes up for it all the time. You know, I've even added China shipping straight just to see what happens. I know if I opened it up across the board to direct shipment to other countries, I would probably boost my sales. But when I did that, I did have some losses from missing items in the past. So if it runs into 5 or 10% of the total value, it's just not worth it for me to do it if I'm, you know, maybe gaining 10 or 15%. It's not worth the 5% extra boost to have the 10% of aggravation from that, I guess you would say. So, you know, I'm pretty mellow and enjoy a non aggravating life these days. My life's pretty mellow and easygoing, and you know, I'm not stressed out. I don't have to rush. I don't have to be anywhere, anytime, almost never. So, you know, and that's just part of it. So I would rather lose a little bit of sales by adding that tracking in and charging them the extra money. So anyway. Yeah, if you guys want to get together, go ahead and shoot one out on that. Brimfields. Brimfields is the best place to go that I've ever seen. Hey, Annie. Hey, Costa. Sorry I didn't call you out there. Question, how do comics do on Amazon? Do you ever cross-post them there? I have put comics on Amazon. I think I may have a half a dozen or so on Amazon. They're not nearly as good of a mover as eBay. Amazon still, and they've talked about pushing the collectibles on Amazon, and I've heard it talk. If you don't have an Amazon store, on Amazon, when you're in your Seller Central, it's called, and if you're in my Patreon group, I've showed a little bit on the insides of Amazon just yesterday on a video that I posted just for Patreon. And Amazon offers, there's talk boards, there's chat boards actually on your main seller board page. At least mine has it on there. I've added everything I can. And you'll see all kinds of stuff in the talk going around, and Amazon makes comments and things like that. And they've been talking about expanding and challenging eBay on antiques and collectibles. And if they do that, you know, they could be a big player in the game and could do some more damage to eBay. But, you know, they still haven't done it yet. So, you know, if you aren't going into Amazon and aren't interested in doing Amazon, you know, or, you know, just don't want it, you could be missing out, because in the near future, if Amazon does a push for doing a big, huge collectibles and antiques section on there, you know, it could literally, they could lock out people from actually getting in there, which they do occasionally. When I first started or tried to get into Amazon, you couldn't get into collectibles on Amazon at all. It was locked. They literally locked it. But I bugged them, and I mean I bugged them. I sent, not rude, arrogant, or anything. Every day I sent a email about it, every single day. And when I got a response, not only did I keep sending the emails out, but I would respond to every person that said something to me. And turn in the forms over and over and over again, because you can turn in the applications over and over again until they accept them. You know, at least I was able to do that. A person in Amazon actually told me, "Hey, you can submit them again and steer your forms in the right direction." I think something along that line. He said he didn't come out and say alter your forms, but you know, I got the gist of what he was saying, and it did work. Shortly afterwards, we did get approved. I have literally went back and forth, and I even shot footage on doing a Amazon, you know, getting accepted. There's just a lot of information that I don't really want to share because it's personal account information on getting started on some of this. So I'm trying to be careful on putting it together where I'm still showing you the information that you need without showing specifics on my account. Amazon's a whole new ball game. It's not any harder than eBay, honestly, but it's a different ball game, and you've got to watch your P's and Q's on there. You know, you don't get a warning on some things on Amazon. You do the wrong thing on Amazon, and they could literally shut you down instantly if that is their prerogative. You know, so Amazon's user agreement's much different than eBay's. You know, when you're selling on there. So I know that's long about there, Annie, but I have tried it. I don't see the results that I do from eBay. Now, there's specific comic book sites as well, too, if you're unaware of that just sell comics. Some of the sites that sell comics on their own do have their own eBay account, too, so I don't know which is better. I've only sold on eBay and Amazon for comics. I've sold a few on Etsy. So you can do comics on Etsy, too, just FYI. Black Crystal Dice, welcome. Hey, Diego, how you doing? How would I ship a full-page magazine? I would take a, I see a super chat, and I'd like to thank you. I wished it would show on Carl. Well, thank you, Carl. I appreciate that. I guess I'm just not up on all of how this works, so now I can't get us back out. There we go. Well, thank you, Carl. I appreciate that. Where were we? Ship a full page ad. I use the Walmart boxes for a full page ad. They're 14-inch cube. Chances are the magazine you have is less than 14 inches would be my guess, at the longest dimensions. And I would just, depending on the value of it, I would either take that same box, just the same thing I do with records. If you haven't seen the video, go back and look, Diego. I've got literally a video that shows me packing up LPs. That's the exact same way I ship sheet music or I ship print ads. Same thing, 14-inch. And if it's not big enough, Walmart sizes, they also have a 16-inch box, which I usually keep a couple of those behind one of the shelves just in case. But I literally cut the Walmart boxes up into 4 sides. One side will usually be enough to do any standard print ad, and then I'll use one single flap to stiffen it. And then as long as you run tape, horizontally across it, it binds the thing together to one tight package. So basically it's wedged anything, if you wrap it that way, between at least 2 if not 3 pieces of cardboard on either side. And then I've got tons of little do not bend. It's just a Word document that I have. I think I've included that on my Patreon page too if anybody wants it. But it's literally just do not bend in all kinds of different sizes, so you can print those up and just tape them on any package you want. I don't buy any stickers, labels, or anything like that. The tape is so cheap. Right now, you can get a 36 count case of 2-inch wide, 2 mil tape that fits in the tape dispensers for $32.33 shipped to your house. Now, it's not A1 top quality tape, but it works fine in my dispenser. I had somebody say that it's loud. It is louder tape, but it's cheap. I don't care about the noise. I usually have music playing anyway. It works fine in the dispenser. Its tension rate is good, and it doesn't tear. And literally just type in 36 count 2-inch tape and 2 mil, and you're going to get these, and just search it by the lowest. And this is the lowest I've seen it. The last time it was up to like $42 for the cheapest one. So I usually buy more cases when it's cheaper. I know it's only $10 saving, but if you save $10 a month buying tape, it's $120 just in tape. If you save, you don't buy any packing material and you pick up free newspaper, you're saving another $15-20 a month. That all adds up. Every single dime you do, penny pinch the heck out of your business, and you're going to earn some more money. If you're not itemizing, you're not doing, your taxes properly, you're leaving money on the table. So anyway, let's see here. Hopefully that answers it, Diego. That's literally what I do. One side of a 14-inch cube box from Walmart is what I use to pack up almost every full-page magazine ad, because most of the magazines aren't over 12 inches. Let's see here. Mike, you seem well ingrained in your endeavors on eBay. With the crazy amount of listings you claim you have on eBay platforms, do you ever have time to smell the roses? I have employees, Mike. It's not a claim. I don't have to claim anything. These are actually facts. You can look at the store I share. That is just one single store, and I think I've got 25,000 items live that you can look at right this very second. That's not counting Amazon. I've showed some basics on Amazon. My Patreon page, you can obviously see I have a seller account on Amazon. I have nothing to hide per se, but I don't share things because things that I do, I am the only one that does. I don't give out every information. My top dollar items I do not share because I make more money on those than I do the collectibles. You can see what I sell in the collectible line. You can see that I am selling thousands of dollars a week very easily. So, my bigger money in this time of year is wholesale, again, which are Christmas items. Second, I just run through a whole string of retail arbitrage. So again, the money's out there. Getting 50,000 listings is nothing when you have employees, and we have a lot of employees. Probably the most I've seen with most people. They all don't work full time, so don't get me wrong. But and some of them are in school, so they only work during school hours, or when they're available outside of school. So, it's plenty of time as the person who runs the business. Everybody can have the time as long as you rotate and you manage your schedules correctly. So. It's not a crazy amount of things up. There's people who have 100,000 items up easily. There's somebody who has almost 100,000 matchbooks up, just matchbooks. There's somebody else who has 100,000 or more magazines, and only magazines. There's people that have 300,000 sports cards up on eBay right this very second. So I'm a small potato in the big scheme of things, and I literally am a small potato. There's people who have, a couple 100,000 items up on Amazon even, which is nothing either. You can import a file from one site to another. You can pay for like a secondary or third party that will actually do all the work for you and cross-list your items and take them down for you. It just costs money to do everything. It costs the time, and then you have to be able to be willing to give up enough and to take a risk when you start. But I have the time when I want it, but I am happy when I'm working. I love being busy. I get off on this. It's what I like doing. I love looking at antiques. I love finding something unique and rare and, something that no one's seen. I was ecstatic the other day when I walked off with an Elvis autograph. I picked up silks. I mean, whatever I do, I like doing it. I like looking at these things. I like getting them ready. I like fixing them up. I like repairing. I'd love to be a conservator at a art gallery or a major museum and actually restore stuff. I love fixing, working with my hands. You see, I sell mostly, vintage stuff. I used to do, clothing and CDs and stuff like that and books majorly. That used to be all of our business. Now we do CDs on wholesale. I don't do as many books, and I don't like clothing, so I stopped. So, we've got the ability to stop selling something I don't like. I've got the ability to leave and still have my business running these days. I've got what I want out of my life. This is the best this is the best time I've ever had in my life, Mike. So regardless of what it looks like, my life isn't all this because again, I've got employees. I've got 4 people working in here. If I didn't have, hired help besides that, I've got 2 kids that do stuff here for me. I've got my wife, and other people as well besides that. And we're actually thinking about bringing another on as we expand our business. I've got a couple conversations I'm going with 2 toy companies, so we're going to have toy business. I've got another, I'm going to do another DBA for another business that we've got going on. I've got, stuff going on, and I enjoy that. As long as you're able to partition your time, you're not wasting your time, and you can delegate the work to somebody, you're able to keep the business going in advance. And that's again why I'm able to do YouTube here like this, because again, I've got employees. I've got Ian sitting behind me right this minute. And you've seen he's been in a couple of videos. I know he's been in at least one for one of our picks. So you have seen a few of my employees. My son, I'm going to have him start talking about some things too. My youngest one, he's really good on IDing and researching on military collectibles, and he's got I shouldn't say little, he's got a really nice collection. And he swaps and makes some money here and there on stuff too. So he's going to talk about some things, and we're going to show you some other things going on. But again, I couldn't do this and be where I'm at by myself without spending years doing it. I know I've been full-time for 6 years, but still, everything takes time. Maybe if you don't have a big store and you don't have any help, it may look like an impossible feat. But I started off with just me, and a keyboard and a few items to start with, and went from there. And 6 years down the road is where I'm at now with 50,000 or whatever we have up now. So that's literally what it does. It's not an impossible feat. It's not some crazy number anyway. I look at people on YouTube. There's a few on YouTube who have over 1,000 or 100,000 right now. So it just depends. There's people who run a store, do eBay, do several sideline businesses, do Craigslist, that do seven things or more. I do 7 different platforms that we make money on. There's people who've got dozens of them, and I'm just, beyond me on how to get all that going with 1 or 2 people doing it. One of them's a husband and wife team, and they've got all kinds of stuff going on. We're a husband and wife team, but our kids and family and their friends are involved too. So I know it was another long-winded one, but here, let's get back to some questions here. Let's see here. Don't want to add any creases. Sorry for the autocorrect. Creases. I missed something here. Let me pop back up because it looks like my chat just dropped. And hang on just a second here. Sharif Hoffman, Don, can you expand on getting Unguided on vinyl on Amazon? I sell thousands of records with tens of thousands of 45 backstock. Amazon now requires supplier manifest and I get mine at auctions. I don't. I've never had to supply a manifest for records. It's vintage vinyl. You're not selling new. You want to apply for the collectible category and collectible vinyl, not the new barcoded vinyl. That's the difference what you're doing. And when you get ungated, the problem with listing on Amazon without being ungated is you don't have access to a UPC or any of the numbers that you would need to list on Amazon. You can buy those, mind you, and still be able to do it, but it's really expensive, so it's not even practical. Once you get ungated, though, the SKU is what you create. Once you create your own SKU for an item, they will set up their actual internal number for you, but again, that's being ungated. Otherwise, you're going to have to supply the actual manifestos or your purchase orders is usually what they want to see. But again, vintage vinyl, not new vinyl, not new barcoded vinyl, but vintage collectible vinyl is very accessible. And again, it's a collectibles ungating. It is not a music ungating. In the music category, you have to supply that. We are lucky enough that I do buy wholesale, and I'll throw you out a little key here on getting ungated in CDs. It is very feasible to get purchase orders and wholesale slips on Christmas CDs, because Christmas CDs are public domain for the most part. You can get public domain Christmas songs and then market those on Amazon. So once you get those receipts that show that you bought the Christmas ones for wholesale, that will ungate you on any CDs because it ungates you in the entire category of CDs. So that is one way a lot of people use, or a lot of people in my area and my grouping use to get in. That isn't what I use, but that is a very accessible way to get you ungated in new music. I can't say on whether they have it separated from new vinyl and CDs, but that'll at least get you into the category. But again, collectibles is the category for records I sell in. I do not sell vinyl in the music category. That may sound a little odd, but in collectibles, there is literally a vintage vinyl section in there. And like on the music category, there isn't options to list things in certain conditions, but if in collectibles, I can list them in 10 different conditions down to good. So, there's a big plus in getting ungated anywhere you can on Amazon. But again, if you don't have an account with Amazon, the minute you get ungated, you're billed $39.99 for a seller account fee. So anyway, there's no fee to list on Amazon, though. Once you are ungated, you only pay their fees when they sell, and then you pay the monthly reoccurring $39.99 fee per month from Amazon. So you only pay the fees when you sell something. On Amazon, I usually sell my items for more. Now, 45s, if you're selling 45s, you try Discogs, I would say. That would be simple, easy to get into. You can gang list just like you can on eBay, or not on eBay, on Amazon, just like you can list underneath some already created listing. There's a whole play on that too. So Discogs we use. On Amazon, I sell, if you're going to sell records, the ones that sell the most on Amazon and for the highest price are 78s, just across the board, just to be honest with you. 78s I far outsell anything else on Amazon, let me straighten that up. On Amazon, I far outsell everything with 78s. So I sell more 78s than I do everything on there. Some wholesale items, obviously, I sell more, but I'm talking collectibles in general. So hopefully that answers your question. Duncan VR, how you doing? Auction's going really well. Do fire insurance policies sell well? Have two currently at 52 pounds each with lots of bids. Some sold 2 stamps at 200 each. Ended both with 29 bids. Policies sell well, but what I've noticed on most of the policies and things like that, people buy them for the tax stamps or, some of the stamping on it. The back of the books, they're called. BOBs, back of the books. Those are like revenues and things like that. Usually when I'm selling documents like policies or anything like that, literally it's going to a stamp or a Cinderella collector. And if you're not, you know what, I'm sure, Duncan, you know what a Cinderella is, but for those who don't, Cinderellas are like fantasy stamps, postage stamps. They're not really good for anything other than decorations. Cinderellas can be poster stamps or advertising pieces or made to look like it or sold for Easter seals are Cinderellas, basically. So, but that's most of what I would sell stuff like that for. I haven't had any insurance or fire insurance policies, I should say. I've had a few early insurance policies, and I actually have a John Dyer who started and founded. I think he started Metropolitan or Progressive, one of the two, but I've got his autograph on some early documents from an insurance company right now. So I do mess with insurance stuff. You might get lucky, and there could even be someone famous who signed it. So I would double check the signatures on those. They do very well if it has revenue and signatures and historical information, at least from what I see. It's paper. It sounds like you've got a good start at them now anyway. Let's see here. Hey, Cindy, how you doing? Barnstar Vintage, better late than never. Yep. I started actually a little early today. We were feeling cold and frisky, I guess you could say. It's nice and chilly outside. It's in the 20s right now. We're supposed to get an inch or so of snow. Hey, Richard, how you doing? Any ideas on shipping 1700s newspaper that I do? I want to add any creases to it. Would a postage... I've sold 1700s newspapers. I get those whenever I can pop on them. Colonial papers sell very well. I would literally pack them just like I ship, just like I was telling Diego. I would use, chances are it's already folded, so I would guess it's probably 10 inches by maybe 12 or 14 inches. Usually those newspapers are smaller or folded, and I usually send them the way I found them. So if they were folded, I'm not going to unfold them because that would put due stress on the paper. But otherwise, I would use a 14-inch cube from Walmart. I would cut it down. If you sold it for a lot of money, I might use half the box and double pack it with 2 strips of the side panels. I'm actually trying to type up a book on, exactly what I do and to give you a bunch of options on shipping that's going to literally show diagrams on what to cut, where to cut. I may have to charge, and I'm not trying to market it and get some money off it, but I've got time invested into it. It'll just be a nominal fee if anybody's interested in it. I might include it in my Patreon group as well. But the way I pack, it's you need very few types of boxes, very few sizes. As long as you're selling the type of stuff that we are, it works great. A 14-inch cube for the newspaper. If it's not quite big enough, you go ahead and you get the large size box from Walmart, which are 16-inch cubes, and then you use 2 panels, half that box. It will cost you like 68 cents to mail that in cardboard. I don't like to send used items like that, vintage items, collectible items like that, in used cardboard. I just don't like to do it. I know people have looked at me and made comments about that, thought it was stupid, but I send to some museums, and I know people said, that don't matter. They just care about getting them. It looks so much more professional, new cardboard, custom made to the size, and all, even if it's nothing fancy and it doesn't take you any extra time. I've just like the way it goes out that way. So that's how I wrap it. And that's what I would recommend, Richard. Just get a 14-inch cube. I'm pretty sure you said you've watched the videos, so you should know what I'm talking about. It's the same one I pack with sheet music, the same one I use for 12-inch LPs, and that's literally what I would do. I would just double it if you have to and use 2 panels from one of the Walmart boxes instead of just one. It would stiffen it. I've never had an issue with sending old newspapers. You see I send a couple a month easily, sometimes a couple a week, and I'm talking modern size, and I ship them the same way. I use the 16-inch cubes. I use 2 pieces of side panel, 2 sides of a box. Hopefully that makes sense, Richard. And I do see what the correction was now that I caught up to what I've missed. Costa, have I ever hit the 127 yard sale? No. It's a lot of drive time, and for me, somebody I know will probably go to it, and I'll hear some calls from the pickers. Yeah, I could miss some good items or miss this or miss that, but my problem isn't getting, finding merchandise. I have tons of merchandise. And merchandise rolls in fairly easily around here for me anyway. So, once I stop clothing, I've got the room for it now. So that's key here too. So I don't mess with it, honestly. Nothing wrong with it. They had one in that went through Mississippi when we lived there that I did go to a couple cities worth of it. It's hit or miss. I'd rather go to a bona fide call from a picker, or honestly, I'd rather hit a flea market or something like that. So I know I'm going to at least make something no matter what. It just reminds me of going to a thrift stores around here where I might walk out of a thrift store and only find 1 or 2 things that are sellable out of an hour trip to a thrift store. And, I can't make money that way. It just depends on what you're looking for too. So I'm not saying you can't make a ton of money there. I know people who do it. It's just not for me anymore. I've got my ways to find stuff these days, and the more you do, the more you can find, and the more people and connections you get. Connections are key to this too. You've got to know people, you've got to talk to people. I'm not a big social person. I don't talk a lot. Obviously, I'm on here, but I'm not. No one's here in front of me. I might have a harder time dealing with stuff that way, but you know, I'm not one to rush out to these places anymore these days. It just doesn't do it for me, I guess. And I don't have to, thank goodness, for me anyway. Again, there's nothing wrong with it. I hit everywhere you could go back when I first started off. I mean, I crawled on the floor in dirty garages, and you name it, I did it. I don't care about getting dirty. My time is spent better elsewhere, I guess. Thanks, Carl. I did look up a couple and did notice a few sterlings, which is why I bid on it and bought the spoons. That sounds like a good thing then. As long as there's a few sterlings in there, you're not going to get skunked. Most spoons weigh at least a half an ounce or on average, so if you get a couple sterlings in there, you're going to get $16.50 or so out of it. I think that's what silver's running. Last I checked a day or so ago it was. Always set a cutoff point, so that's good. So it sounds like you're following the plan and trying to stick to it. So Duncan, I shipped to China, but always tracked mostly good buyers, but one scammed a friend of mine on 10-penny black covers. Yeah, I wouldn't mind finding a whole bunch of 10-penny black covers myself, but, most people probably don't know what that is. But if you type that in, you're going to see it. It's a Queen Victoria stamp. Claimed he only got 4, but all Chinese buyers I deal with are good. Yeah, I haven't had much issues with Chinese buyers. I have no issue with, Chinese manufacturing or anything like that. We're in a capitalistic country, and the people who are dogging on China for being able to ship cheaper, our country here, most businesses in this country would do the exact same thing if it meant their bottom line would be better. So we're not fooling anybody here. They just want the playing field back in our favor, which I can see. But again, if it was switched around and we had cheap shipping and China didn't, I guarantee you our country wouldn't be complaining about that. So, it's a toss of the coin on who you side with on any of these. Obviously, I'm an American and I fully side with America, but, I don't get on companies when we've set the establishment to be, a capitalistic market. So I mean, I'm not saying I believe in it being the best system out there, but it's what we got. So I have never had an issue with China. We buy from Alibaba all the time these days. Alibaba is a very good source. The shipping is cheap, is part of the reason I buy for it. I know a lot of people say the product quality is terrible, but we buy some electronic parts, and my son, as I've talked about, makes some things. And, I have not had an issue with even a single piece or part from any of the electronics industry, from any of the items I've bought from Alibaba at all. And we've dealt with Alibaba now for maybe a year and a half buying, and I'm talking buying some bulk items too. I don't have returns, so I don't really think that there's as many scammers in China as everybody says. I know there's people knocking everybody off, but there's people in this country knocking people off. I was in Byram, Georgia, Glen Byron, I think it's called, Georgia, and I went to a flea market there. There was bootleg DVDs on almost every table in that place with cops walking around, and the cops didn't even do anything about it. And these are bootlegs that were made over here, I am sure. So, whatever you do, people knock off anything if they think they can get away with it and make a fortune on it. So, I know that's a little bit of rant. Let's just move on from there. Let's see here. I scored 80 Hallmark collector ornaments for 300 too. Looked a few up and I can afford Longtail. Except Aptos. You're right when you list a bunch of something you... Yeah, I tell everybody that, and they wonder, Carl, if I list 100 items, I'm selling a certain percentage of 5-10% in the first 5 days. And I can just throw these numbers out there because it always works that way. And I do mean always. If you save up, you bulk list a bunch of things together, not only do you save time on taking the photographs, you save time on listing, and you usually sell some right away. Now, the only exception to that rule is that I usually try to list a couple items out of an expensive lot to get my money back right away. And sometimes with the few that I sell immediately that same night I list them, I've already paid for my lot the same day I walked into the house with it. So that is your goal if you're just starting off. You sell something quick. This goes into the folks that have a hard time judging their time and scheduling their time and procrastinating. If you procrastinate, you're not going to be able to flip the items quick enough. The rule of thumb is you should spend so many hours a day. So if you sourced, you got some good items, list enough good items still that night. I don't care if you're running under 10 or 12 hours. If eBay is your only business, you've got nothing else to do with your work time. Work 10 or 12 hours that day to get something up, to get money back out of it. You get paid immediately. You get your money straight through PayPal. You can transfer it as much as you want to your bank account. So just switch it back to your bank account. You could have the money back from what you purchased today, tonight, and use that money again to source and do the same thing tomorrow. Even if you're a one-man person, I don't still have a problem working 12-hour days. And most of my days are 12 hours. I got up at 5:45 this morning. It's now 8 o'clock. I have not stopped doing something since 5:45 this morning. That is my day, Monday through Friday, every weekday. If my kids or somebody isn't going to school, I am still up by 6:30. I'm an early riser. So, you're going to have to dig in. So, and I know a lot of people just don't see it as that way, but do 12-hour days if you have to. Do you say you're killing, it's going to kill me, I can't do it, whatever the case may be. But that's what all the people do. That's what people do when they start a big business. Most people who are running a big multi-million-dollar or billion-dollar industry or business are working some hours, especially when they first started. I can't compare myself to any huge company, but I sure as heck know the business philosophy of putting in the time and the effort to do this, and I'm not afraid to do it. But I set my own rules. So, it's not like I'm stuck working 12 hours for somebody. I'm setting my own rules. I may not work straight 12 hours, but I am always on the go. And if I go somewhere, I'm still answering my offers. I'm still sometimes even posting from my phone if it's a retail arbitrage. Right now, you should have some good items. Hopefully, you've sourced. You've went to Targets and some other places. You've found some clearance items that you can set up yourself one listing, and you can buy more as you need them, and you can just literally list them like on Amazon items. If you're doing FBA on retail arbitrage, I can list the items literally and add to the quantity before I've even purchased them, and in some cases I can sell them before I walk out of the store. So the money's there. This is like the best time to make money for anybody who's got half a brain, because it's all open. You can advertise cheap. You can have different markets. You can have different avenues. You can sell across multi-platforms with very little experience, very little business knowledge. You can do all of this in this day and age that you couldn't do when I was a kid. There's no need for a traditional job if that's what you don't want. A lot of the traditional jobs are going away. So, this is prime time here. Let's see here. Let me move on here again. Glad that works for you, Carl, there. I said it works, and it does work. You sell some every night you get them. If you list every day, you're going to sell some of those new items every day, and then you're going to add on your long tail items. That's how you make the money that we do. That's how you sell the stuff that we do. And that's how we can get so many items up, because we list similar and like items right next to each other, straight in a row. It's just a given. Let's see, where are we? George Fernandez, welcome. You frequently mention antique malls in your videos. I live in New York. Never heard of an antique mall. Can you elaborate? It's just basically a big antique store with multiple antique vendors in the store. I guarantee they're all over New York. I've been to antique malls myself in New York City many times. And even outside, upstate New York, I've been to some antique malls when we went through towards after 9/11. So every state in the union has antique malls here, I guarantee it. It's just a big antique store. Just looking under antiques online in the yellow book, the phone book, and you're going to find them for sure. You want to hit an antique mall over an antique store, because in an antique mall you'll have sometimes hundreds of different opportunities to find a seller who doesn't know all of their items, or a seller who's underpriced things. If you're going to an antique mall, usually it's just one person selling their goods, and most of the time they've looked them up because they have so much more at stake. When you are running an antique mall, everything isn't looked up. The people running it get their money right off the bat from the people paying the fees to be in the store. So the antique malls usually are your best sources and best places, in my book, to find stuff if you have no other source. Flea markets are good. Antique auctions are great. Even modern day auctions of newer stuff are good too. So Whatever doesn't sell, I'll just pull and relist next October. If you don't have the free listings, that's a good plan. But for us, I usually leave stuff, Carl, and just let it run because we sell. Hallmark is collected all year round, believe it or not. If they're Hallmark ornaments, usually you can sell them throughout the year. You may not get quite as much. I'm usually fine sacrificing that because usually I'll try and do them and list them right away, and I'll usually get my money back right away. So I may take a little less percentage, but I'm still increasing my sales, throughout the summer, even after the holidays. And I wouldn't, if you do plan to take them down, I wouldn't take them down to the end of January because sometimes people actually sit online and try to buy the vintage Christmas ornaments after the holidays because people tend to get rid of them at that point. So I usually don't pull off Christmas, if I would, until after January, just FYI. Let's see here. Welcome, Swamp Picker. Aaron, would you buy any Bluebird 78 if it's around $1? Bluebirds have two different 78 versions. Bluebird, I've called out a Bluebird as it was, or a Bluebird as it was. I do believe you can get Glenn Miller's In the Mood on a Bluebird, and that is probably one of the higher priced ones. I have hundreds of Bluebirds right now. Bluebird is a good label to get, but you cannot buy it by the label. The label means nothing. There are two different kinds of Bluebird labels. There's a buff, which looks kind of like a tannish beige, and then there's the dark blue one. The buff one is the best one to get for the most part because they're usually earlier. They're usually higher dollar ones too for the most part. But Bluebird is a good label, but it does not depend on the label. It depends on the actual performer on it. I've had good luck with selling stuff that most people don't mess with, which is big band. Glenn Miller is a very good seller for me. The Andrews Sisters are a very good seller for me. Tommy Dorsey is a very good seller for me. Things along that line do sell very, very well. There's some that don't sell well, though. But Glenn Miller's I buy all the time. I sell a Glenn Miller In the Mood every time I get it. Just this year, I think I've done 12 Glenn Millers at $50 on average a piece. That's just one specific record, Glenn Miller. I did over $600 on that one record in a dozen copies of it. I've got a couple here now that aren't even listed. So there's some records that you're going to sell on the Bluebird or even on just the Batwing or even just a standard regular label depending on the brand you're talking about or the performer. But you've got to look it up, Aaron, by the actual performer on the record. It's a given. Or you have to know something about it, honestly. If you can get them dirt cheap as a whole big lot, let's say you can get 300-400 78s that are all Bluebirds or in that era for, say, $50, it would well be worth your time to at least get to know and understand how the whole market works, truthfully. They have different... Yeah, they're... Jerry, yeah, thanks, Jerry. Welcome. Yeah, they could be called different things. I would not say a swap meet is the same thing as an antique mall. Flea markets are not antique malls either, Jerry, just FYI. They're their own line. An antique mall... I don't know if I've ever heard them called anything other than antique mall, but I mean, maybe somebody locally calls them. In the phone book, they're all listed under antiques. Every one that I've seen. Usually you'll get lucky and find some of the flea markets listed under antiques too, but usually there's a separate section for flea markets. And swap meets would be something totally different. We have a swap meet here at an old racetrack occasionally. It's just usually not much. Swap meets would be the bottom of my list for places to go. Out of those three, anyway. I still go to them, don't get me wrong. There's still good money to be had, but an antique mall is first in my book and then a flea market. Depending on which one you're talking about. There's some flea markets that are better than antique malls, but anyway. Let's see here. The truth. Every package I send out is wrapped with craft paper and covered with tape, no matter the size. I plastic wrap everything. Everything goes in a sealed plastic sleeve bag or something 2 mil or better for everything I go out, and everything goes in cardboard from there. Just the way I do it. Nothing wrong with what you're doing, but I even send books wrapped in cardboard. I've never had a book or a piece of paper damaged that I can think of. It's very hard to say that's happened. Let's see, Don, is it worth it to buy a good gem identifier? If you do a bunch of it, Saigon, probably so, but I don't own one. I've got a local buyer that buys all my scrap gold and silver. It's the highest guy in town. He pays higher than everybody else. He melts his own in the whole works. He's got a business and he refines it in the whole works, so he's the one I go to. he'll test any piece for me just because I bring in so much gold for scrap for him. So I wouldn't buy one personally. I'd just set the jewelry aside and then go in and get it. And you can work out some arrangements like that if you do scrap gold like we do. So just keep that in mind. I don't buy anything I don't have to buy. There's some specialty items that I do personally own. I never went out and bought the gold scrap tester because I can just take it somewhere and they'll check it for free with their. It's now some kind of laser checker they have now that instantly tells you. So, and that's usually what they do. They'll just pop it in the little booth and boom. That's what I do anyway. Carl, best time of my life too. Yeah, this is usually, people would be shocked and stuff, but my friends nowadays don't even question it anymore. I just don't have employees, but I love what I do. Doing 160 a year gross and growing each year. Got to get some help soon. Yeah, I would say at that point, it depends on, your bottom line. So, of course, after taxes and all, what it is. But anyway, Death Pile, how you doing? Hopefully that death pile isn't referring to, like, merchandise you have laying around. I don't call anything a death pile, and I hear that all the time. For us, it's backstock. It's extra inventory. I don't call anything a death pile. Nothing wrong with your name, so I'm not cracking it. It's a comment that's made. Oh, my death pile's gotten big. It's not a death pile unless you've turned it into one. So, not trying to criticize your name, of course. Welcome, Rebecca. Glad to have you on the live show. Thoughts on old photographs of normal people. Sell them a lot. Across tons of personal family collections that are old at auctions. Thoughts. Worried it will be waste of time. Type in snapshots and then lot on eBay, and you're going to see people that sell. And I know a guy who does this. He'll just throw them together when he buys them. He'll pick out the good ones. He'll pull out the RPPCs out of family collections at estate sales, and then he'll sell like 500 snapshots for like $125 or $150. You'll see them on there. I mean, there's a ton of people that do this. I've seen every gambit on stuff like photos and stuff. I'll bulk them up. They're not quick movers, but you get enough together, you're going to make some money. That would be something if you're seeing them all the time and they're dirt cheap. I would not spend much at all. A penny or two on each photo would be about the max I would ever spend on bulk, just common photos. And they'd all have to be black and white, or it would have to include like bikini shots or something along that line. I'm not trying to be sexist or anything else like that. That's just what sells. All respect to everybody, but it's a money thing here. So get what sells, and that seems to be what would sell if you're going to do that kind of thing. You got to have some car photos or something. Family photos are a bulk lot. You might only get $70 for 1,000 snapshots of just standard people. So look them up in comps. There's tons of them up there. I guarantee it because I've seen them. I know somebody who lists those, personally lists those. So I've even been to his house and I know what he lists. He's got 50,000 loose snapshots because all he messes with is photos and photo booth pictures and all kinds of things along that line. So anyway, let's see here. Linda, our old house was insulated with old magazines. Yeah, I've heard that many times. There's 4 nail holes in each magazine. Do you think they would still sell with the tiny holes in the cutout articles? If they're damaged beyond belief, I wouldn't mess with them. If there's just 4 little tiny holes, they're vintage good magazines. If they're not good titles, I wouldn't mess with them. I'd just bulk them up. Or sometimes they could be so deteriorated, they're fragile. If they're crumble, I wouldn't mess with them unless there's some rare magazine. In cases and occasions, there's been some people who found comic books in the walls. And I'm talking some high-dollar comic books. There was a story not too long ago, maybe 3 or 4 months ago, that somebody found, I don't know, it was a couple $1 million worth of comic books that were used for insulation. So it's not an uncommon practice. And they sold them all. They went to some high-end auction actually out of New York. Might have been Sotheby's if I remember right. Yeah, it might have been Sotheby's if I remember. And I think there was a catalog for it. Somebody showed me this a while ago. It's been a while. But it accompanied the story of where these were found. And they were insulation. At least that was the assumption they made. It's not an odd thing. When people were broke in the Depression and things like that in the 30s and 40s, you used what you had, just like we do when we can. I'll make do with what I have. I'm not a big fancy person. We could buy a new car if I wanted to. I don't care. I'd rather invest my money into where I live than drive around in something that I can't live in. So, and I'd rather have money in the bank than have a new car too. That all comes to being frugal. You'll see people with, Mercedes. I've even seen a Rolls Royce at a thrift store before. So you got to save money however you can. Let me pop down here. I am bouncing around again. Larry D, welcome. Do I list all my items good till cancel? Not all of them. I have, and I've talked about this a little bit before. Some items like records, I'll list every, for a 30-day, and then I'll set up so I'll manually list them. And I do that sometimes because I want to give them a chance to sell on eBay, or I plan on cross-listing or something along that line, or I don't have the time to cross-list. Most of the time, though, most listings go up for good till canceled. Sometimes in the past I've listed, and recently I've done it too, I'll list like a certain group of items for 30 days because I'm not sure on the price and the category. So after 30 days I may switch the category or the price depending on the percentage of that item that's sold. So let's say I list 100 items in one category at a certain price, it didn't sell. And at the end of the 30 days, I'll reassess the condition on them or what the pricing scheme should be. Sometimes I'll even go back through after 30 days and look at comps to see if anything new showed up to give me a better idea on what I had. So it's just a philosophy I do. I mean, it is what it is. Sometimes it's great to do it that way, and other times it's just extra time I'm killing by not just having them auto relist on their own. But you got to find something that works for you. Picking profits. What are your thoughts on using promoted listings? I do not use promoted listings for any collectibles at all. For most items I sell, I've got one of the only items online or one of a very small group of items. And unless a person is online for that specific item, you can promote it all you want. You're not going to get an increase in sales on it. Not any better than you would if you say went to and did a sales markdown and promotion, non-paid, doing it on your own and doing it that way, and you'll get just as good results. But when I do those kind of promotions through myself, the sales markdown, I'll hit my watchers list first. I'll sort my items through who has the most watchers, and then I'll address those with the markdown sale, because chances are if they've been up for a certain length of time, I've probably priced them maybe too high. I'd rather price something too high than too low any day of the week. But the answer to that is I never, ever do promoted listings. And I'm running a test now just to prove a point. I've done the 1% or 2% like other people do on a certain limited number of items in one category that I have similar items on as well. And I'm going to sit there and judge. I may put a video together so you can see the difference. Because somebody else was arguing with me over the fact that they say, oh, it's going to work, promoted this, promoted that. You're going to get up to the top of the list. If you've only got there's only one or two of whatever you're selling up online, you're going to be at the top of the search no matter what because you're the only one who has it. It would be wasting your money on stuff like that. Now, let's say you're selling clothing, and that clothing, there's 10 other people that have the exact same piece of clothing. You're not going to get any leverage with that item unless you do some sort of promotion. You're probably not going to get good leverage unless you do free shipping. And that's another reason I don't mess with clothing, because any day of the week, somebody would have the exact same item up I have, and there could be sometimes 100 people up with the same exact t-shirt or shirt or button-down or Harley shirt or a polo or the Tommy Bahamas, for example. Tommy Bahamas used to be worth a lot of money at one point, and the price has gone down steadily. I'm out of clothing though, so but at the end of it, before we finally gave it up, I was hard pressed to sell Tommy Bahamas because everybody was selling them and the price went down. The only way I would get leverage is to do promotions, but not on collectibles, not on rares, not on postcards. I just don't do it. I'll do a markdown. I'll do a 20% markdown on a postcard that's been up for a while or something. I won't do them on any ones that are usually below $7.99 unless I just want to blow them out. I don't feel like pulling them out of inventory. So it's something else we do. We'll go through and pull stuff out of inventory. Hopefully that gives you the answer there, picking profits. But no, don't promote things when there's only one or two of them on eBay. If the comp results only show you one or two, don't ever promote that item unless there's a ton of them on. I've done the gambit. I've done the tests. We've done this for 6 straight years. I've tried everything in the book over this time to increase sales. I've got my steady ways that increase my sales, but all these other little ways are just spinning your wheels. Just like going in and pretending to edit things and not changing anything and saying that's going to reactivate your listings. I haven't seen anything like that unless you change something in the listing. The search results and the criteria are much more complicated than just being able to trick the system. It's just not a actual thing. You may see some results in assume that that's the case, but cause and effect are different. That doesn't mean that that's why you had those sales. It means the right person was online at that time. So anyway, Carl, I see Carl's got his game going on there, it sounds like. Good for you, Carl. 12, 14-hour days. I do love what I do. So that's why I say people are going to get burned out on this. I have constantly people saying, don't share all this. Why are you sharing this? I've had other YouTubers make some pretty nasty comments, and I wouldn't call it a threat, but saying, I'm giving away too much or something. Most people are going to give up. Most people don't have the dedication to sit there and work 10, 12-hour days, 14-hour days if that's what it takes to do this. They'll just eventually not make enough money, or they won't get enough up, or they won't research it. Again, I'm not criticizing anybody here. Everybody has their own game. Everybody has their own level. But you got to be able to do the work. You've got to be into this enough, not just to say, hey, I want to make it richer, I want to make some money. You have to like what you are doing to really be successful. Now, don't get me wrong. Some people can be successful for other reasons. But for the average person, including me, I'm just an average person, the way I got successful is by putting in a ton of hours and being totally dedicated to what I do. I live, I breathe, I sleep, I eat in front of eBay every single day of my life. I sleep with the phone next to me. So the minute I get up, if there's offers, I accept them at 5:45 in the morning. If I'm sitting in bed watching a rerun of South Park or Family Guy or something, or Eastbound and Down or something like that, my phone is here, so I'm still accepting. If I go to a friend's house, my phone is there, so I'm still working. If I'm at the store, I'm still answering emails. I'm still accepting offers wherever I go. So, this has to be your life. You have to be on the ball. You have to be quick. You have to pay attention to what's going on. And that's literally why I can share a lot of this, because so many people will start it, they'll lose interest. It won't be as easy or as quick as they think. And that's why I always say this is not easy in any way, shape, or form. I do a lot of work, and I see people that maybe work less than me that do make more than me, but they don't like their job. They don't have any static time where they can stop what they're doing and go do something. They're still tied to somebody else. So I'm happy with what I do. That's the number one thing I could tell everybody. If you're not happy with what you do, you're spinning your wheels. You're just spinning your wheels left and right. And it's frustrating to see it for other people, but that's how I can afford to do this and offer this information, because maybe 9 out of 10 people that watch these videos of mine are just going to give it up, or just curiosity's sake, or, don't believe it or don't see it. I just feel sorry for some people that don't see that this is a full-fledged life and a full-fledged business for somebody where this is all you'd have to do. You expand your business, you expand your items, you expand your inventory. Your goal is to get as much up. Again, going back to like the 50,000 items up, it took us 6 years to get 50,000 items up, because you sell some, and this is with help. So, I don't know how people get 100,000 items up on their own unless they took 10 years to do it. So, which is possible. Let me see where we're at here. I think I've just lost another section. My YouTube is terrible here, and I'm sure it's because of my internet. Let me see where we're at again. Yes, set your own rules. That is key. You're welcome, George. Yeah, Carl, if you don't have, if you're paying a ton for the listings, you might want to pull them down instead of running it. Run your cost at the end of the season, see how many ornaments you have up, and estimate your costs till fourth quarter of next year to see if that added increase in expenses into those ornaments is worth your time. It may be practical if you don't have an anchor store and you're spending 10, 20 cents or whatever the case may be to not list them through the summer if you've, say, got 60 of them up. Just figure out the math, Math plays a big role in everything I do. My phone has the calculator app on it directly on the front. It doesn't have the basic version. It has what's it called? The calculating version of it that has the actual equations and all in it too. Just because sometimes you might need to do some algebra to figure out prices and your fees. So just FYI. Let me see here. Violet Lemon, welcome. How you doing? Peddling Profits, how you doing today? Take it easy, Wally. Do Portrait 78 sell well? I found a bunch of 7/8 that have photos of them. If they have photos on them, you are probably looking at Vogue records. And yes, they do. If you paid very little for a Vogue record, most Vogue records, if that's what they are, sell for $8 at the very minimum. And I've sold Vogue on average for $15 to $25 a piece, if they are Vogue records. It depends on what you're meaning by portraits. And what you're meaning by 7/8. Now, if they're like flexi cardboard, that's a different story. If they're actually shellac records with photos on them, they could be foreign for one. They could be promotional for another. There's some movie-related ones that actually have printed images on them as well. Disney has a set. Maybe it's Silly Symphonies, or maybe it's, oh, shoot. I think it's a Silly Symphony set, but they're smaller records too, just keep in mind. I know there's a Cinderella picture disc set, but portrait-wise, you're probably talking about a Vogue. You're welcome to post a picture of them in my Facebook group. I have not had a chance to get on there in just a couple days. I'm going to try and get on there tonight. If not, first thing in the morning. If anybody has any questions or if you have anything posted up on Facebook, I will answer everything in the morning. I will probably be on early in the morning, so if you have any questions or anything like that, I might be able to get right back to you tomorrow. I'd like to get a schedule posted on Facebook so people know what days I will be available on there. My schedule is hectic, but I do have time to do some things. I just kind of partition it, so I've got a bunch of questions to answer all at once. It's a little quicker in my time. As I said, I gang up everything I can. Post some pictures, J.I., and we can go from there, and I can probably guess what they are right now. Thanks, Violet Lemon. Switching things up. Hoarders heaps, if not selling. Backstock is, if you're talking about having a bunch of stock, it's just backstock to me. So around here, if you live up north, you got to have stuff to carry you through the winter when you can't, source as much. And stuff's cheaper in the summer, so I buy it when it's cheap. And during the winter months, I don't buy as much. Because I'm more time listing and more time in packing up, so I can alter my schedule for a winter version, fourth quarter version versus a summer version. So anyway, do comics from the 80s do well? It depends on the comic book. 80s and 90s, there's even 90s like Catwoman series, or the first appearance of Suicide Squad, or there's even some Batman that sell high. There's some Independence, there's some Marvel. Look them up. That's what I can tell you, because I didn't used to mess with 80s and 90s comics. I tried to stick to the ones I used to collect, and I realized real quick I was missing so much stuff on the table. Some of the newer comics, you can get a quicker turnover rate than some of the old ones. Have you looked up Walking Dead issue 1, first edition, first printing? See what that's worth. It used to be in the $3,000 or $4,000 range, and I've seen it well over that, for a 9.8 cert on one of them. So anyway, yeah, the truth, promoted listings are a sham for collectibles and vintage, but for the new items, unfortunately, I think it's a necessity for a lot of people, unless you got some gimmick or some huge clientele that only comes back to you. But for what I do, it's a sham for me. No need to promote if you have unique. That is 100% right. Sounds like a heavy metal punk name. Yeah, that's fine. I do like heavy metal myself, so I go across the gambit. I used to go to a lot of the shows, Iron Maiden and all that kind of stuff too. Whitesnake, Van Halen, Kiss, of course, as those of you who watch the show know. Change the name and from Death Pile into Backstock, and that's what you're really looking at. It's just basically extra inventory, so you're not going to be in trouble. Your gut instinct is that listing new stuff? Yes, because that does show activity would be correct, Annie. That would be a different case. You've got to show it's just like on YouTube. If you're not putting up videos all the time, you're not going to be rotated, and you're not going to get more viewers and more subscribers. On eBay, if you list every day of the week, you are going to get more leverage on your site because it's an active. You're going to have new items in there all the time. So listing all the time is key. You're definitely right, Annie, 100%. That is something that does sway it because it shows you're an active business. You're not just throwing some stuff up and leaving it. And that is a good ploy in my opinion, because all the drop shippers, and again, nothing wrong with drop shipping. I've done some drop shipping myself, but the drop shipping is flooded so bad. And most everyone I see these days has 97.1 feedback, or in the 97, 96 range. How they're still doing business, I don't know, but you know, if you do drop shipping right, you're fine. But most of the people I see don't research their items, don't come back and check on them, and they have terrible feedback. And that stops the drop shipping from killing the people like us who rush out and enlist and do all we can to get our sales and our stuff going in the right direction. So we're going to have to cut it off here in just a few minutes. Unfortunately, we're running down to the bottom. Ian's got school in the morning. Let's see, 150 items, the truth, to 9 in sales when I did 50-50 on my items in favor of non-promoted. Yeah, non-promoted usually is the best for what I sell. Again, it depends on what you sell. Small figurines from Occupied Japan. Most of them don't go for very much at all. The best ones to get are caricatures of like comic book characters or something unusual or anthropomorphic animals or things along that line seem to sell. And again, they're not going to sell for high money. Now, there are some Occupied Japan items that do go for a lot of money, but they're so far between finding these things. I just don't find the things at all. So we're going to try and get one more question in here. I think I got time for one or so more. Let me see here. Most people are not finding the things you are also. You have a very unique channel. I had somebody say, you know, they don't find my things are so obscure and oddball. If you look enough and you dig into the stuff, everything in every Bolo video I've shown you, I've sold some of those items. Every single one. It's the only reason I even know to look for these items, because we've sold them. Again, I've never said that you're going to find these all the time, but if you know so many different bolos, you're going to run into these items. You're going to run into something that I've showed you in a bolo video probably every day of your life, and the more bolos you know, the more items you're going to run into. So that's the key here. It's not the fact that you might not see a light bulb or a battery for 4 months. It's the time that you do see that light bulb that you're going to make that extra couple $100 or $100 battery sitting on a shelf that you would have never thought would have been worth a dime. That's the key here. That's what's going to make you the money. Not finding 1,000 light bulbs that are worth $500, because you're just not going to do it. But you got to know those different areas to not pass up these things. So I picked up the bottom rung. The bottom of the tree is what I'm showing you. It's things that a lot of people don't think are worth anything, or they think they're just junk or obscure, so they don't list them. Part of the reason you don't see this stuff up there is people don't know about them and don't list them. They'll trash them and discard them. It's not that they're not around, it's that people don't list them for the same reason everybody's saying they don't see them, because they don't pay enough attention or realize where the market is and where you can find a lot of these items, which is true. That's correct, Carl. That's what you need, Jerry. You're on the ball with that. That is exactly what you need to do. Thank you, Picking Profits. I appreciate it. Glad to see you on again there. I checked out your page on the metal there a little while ago. I'm just curious on that, because I got a friend who scraps too, believe it or not. He buys the stuff at even auctions, even the antique auctions. He'll buy brass and stuff. He makes pretty good money. He doesn't make enough to live on yet, but anyway. Yeah, math should be your friend. Thanks always, the truth. Let me go down and just see if I can get one more in here. Thanks, Big Drift Thrift. I got time for one more, literally one more it looks like. If it's a quick one. Let me see if I can find a question. What's your average sale price? You know, I used to worry about that. I only worry about what I sell a day. So right now, the average this month is like $935 for both my anchor stores a day. I do $935 a day on average in this fourth quarter. I don't worry about my average sale price, because one day I might sell something worth $1,000, and the next day I might sell a whole bunch of items only worth $10. I just level it out at dollar per day and profit margin off that. So at $935, I'm doing 80% profit, 80% take home average. It's like 81.23 or somewhere in that range to be exact. But that's the number I'm looking at. So I'm taking home, if I sell $1,000, 800 of that's coming back to me after my fees, after my labor, after my shipping, since they pay shipping. And I know that sounds like a crazy, but when you pay cheap like we do, that's your results. It's not always like that, and when I first started off, it wasn't, but that's how it is these days. I'm going to have to cut it off here, unfortunately, because it is 8:30. I took a little extra. We started early today, so we're running almost to 2 hours today. So I appreciate everybody coming on. If you haven't hit the like button before you sign off, if you'd please hit the like button for me. Help me promote the channel the best I can so I can keep putting out this feedback. I ran late again and I didn't get to my Patreon. I do have some more Patrons, which I will call out in my next video here specifically. We've got some more people. I had Richard, who upped it to a consultation account on my Patreon, but we're going to have to sign it off here. I do apologize. I'm trying to start earlier. I may run the show a little longer because I never seem to ever be able to answer all the questions. But again, I thank everybody for being on. Stay warm. The weather's cold here, so hopefully you're having a good time, and your sales should be going through the roof right now if you're doing the right thing. So have a good night, everybody, and glad to have you on.